Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Erudition Network, Interactive Black History and Knowledge session. I am so happy for all of you all who are with us. We're a little bit delayed today. Again, some internet issues that were going on, but we're here. We're live. This session, if you're new to this to the Erudition Network, this session is a Black History based interactive session that we do every Thursday to go over history, to talk about things that are going on in our society as they relate to history, and to also provide knowledge, things that you may not know, things that may not have been taught, things that are not necessarily seen in our history. And so we do this show every week to try to provide some understanding, some knowledge for those of you that are out there. Today, hey, it's good to see you, Mike. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're coming up on Father's Day, and I had this idea. I was like, I guess I'll hit some historical things about Father's Day and kind of how it relates to Black history. And then I said to myself, I said, what I think I actually should do is to bring on some of the people who actually make me a father. I believe in knowledge of self and self-knowledge and trying to inform yourself. I also believe that the best way to vet what is going on is to also talk to the people who are involved, to case study your own self. Ask those questions and see what you hear. Some things may not be good, some things may not be bad, but it's truthful. And so I wanted to do that as well as kind of give a little bit of history. So I asked my sons, two of my oldest sons, to join me today on the show. They've been on here before many times to join me and to actually, hey, Regina, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. To have this discussion, because God sees, God, by God's blessing, they do to themselves one day will be maybe fathers, and so you want to be able to vet what's going on, especially with the dynamic of what is Black fatherhood. So, without further ado, because I want to get them on and get into this conversation, I'm going to bring on both my sons, my oldest, two boys. To like you said, that's brave. I'm not worried about nothing that they got to say. All right, I'll bring on both my two boys, Eddie II and Sean Anthony. Let me pan you guys out a little bit. That's a little bit better, so it's easier for the audience. Can you boys hear me?
Yes.
Clear, loud and clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Can hear you.
You look a little suspect. You looked a little suspect when I said that. Like, yeah, did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, you're fine. All right. I just wanted to make sure because I want some clarity here tonight on what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you boys, my definition of what I think. I think like, and ladies and gentlemen out there, I want you to understand, I'm not isolating just the Black father per se because for some racial reason. I'm stating this because, excuse my tablet here, because too often we have been portrayed in history, Black fathers are portrayed as something that is not relevant or that is not stable. And so when you hear me speak specifically about Black fathers, I want to talk about that. I don't often hear, sorry about that phone. People say this about many other cultures, but every year I hear it about Black fathers. So my idea, what I believe Black father is that I believe that as a Black father, maybe I should say even African American father, an African American or father in this country that is Black. The thing about it is responsibility, because you children, you boys, you come through me and your mother. Fathers are the progenitors of life. That's semen, that sperm that crosses across that prostate and hits that electrical circuit that gives that spark of life that allows those sperms to travel to go find the egg. It starts with that father. And so there's a responsibility in there, even though that's a very micro level. There's a responsibility there from the moment, even before the inception of life. And so for me, Black father's job is to be responsible, to make sure, and what my responsibilities are is to make sure that you're clothed, that you're fed, that you have the academic, the intellectual, the emotional, the spiritual guidance that you will need to be men. Because as a man, you will. A man can teach a man how to be a man because we are men. Just as there are certain things that I could never teach a female about being a male. There's nothing sexist in that. That's just reality of what it is. So my fundamental definition of fatherhood, of Black fatherhood, is responsibility. Because I have to also be responsible in making sure you understand how to be prepared for a world that will not always treat you correctly or properly or fairly, right?
Yeah, that's most likely the biggest responsibility.
So that's my quick thought on it. What's Sean, after you being younger, what's your thought on it?
My thought on it is, yeah, as you just said, it's a big responsibility that Black fathers have, because regardless of gender or station, you still need a Black father is always going to be needed, because as a daughter, or if you have a daughter, you have to teach her what a good man looks like, what she needs to expect from a man, because you're going to be a man. You know exactly what to look for. And a son, you need to teach him how to be that man. Otherwise, he's not going to grow up well. In either situation, you got to be the man that looks for another man who knows exactly what to look for. And though that's a lot of stress, it also means that you got to get rid of the immature mind, the immature mindset. Otherwise, you're not going. That daughter or son is going to grow up to be the exact opposite of what you want it to be, of what you want them to be. Sorry, I'm like a bit out of sorts at the moment, trying to think.
Okay, Teddy, what's your thought?
My thought on being a father is about the same. It comes down to responsibility at the end of the day, because if you really think about it, all adults are kids grown older. They have experience within this world that they learned through life lessons, or they were taught by some means of either their parents or in school. So when it comes down to fatherhood, you have to take responsibility for your children. You need to raise them in the way that they won't stray when they grow older. And as a parent, you want them to have a long life. So you try to train them because you know that you're not going to be here to see them in their old age. Some people are blessed to be, but sometimes just being the way that it is, that doesn't happen. So you try and pour everything you can to them while you're here, so that when they go out in the world and they're older, they can hopefully continue that and not stray from it. And you teach them what to look out for, what may make you break that conditioning. And that's where the word roots comes from. You establish roots within them so that they know this is what's right. This is my moral code. This is what is and isn't. So they have at least some foundation, even if it's not always right. Some people have a conditioning in them, and that's what they hold on to because it's been passed down. And as a father, you're supposed to do that. But the way that it's done teaches you what your bloodline is going to be. And one thing I always say to my peers, who some of them are fathers right now, and some of them were surprised with it. So it really comes down to how you raise that child to be. But at the end of the day, the moment you pushed life, as you said, once that sperm hits that prostate and you impregnated that woman, like it or not, that's fatherhood right there. You are forever responsible for whatever happened with that child.
So
Sure.
here's the thing. Here's the thing that I wanted to have a discussion with you all tonight. Um, there's simple things, real simple issues that I think that often are bypassed or not um, taken into importance when we talk about the father children dynamic, Black father. A lot of Black fathers work a lot. Statistically, they work jobs where they're paid less than their white counterparts. So a lot of them have to work maybe one or two jobs, as well as the mothers. So when you're looking at that situation, there's not a lot of time um, to spend. One of the things about responsibility is involvement. And so Mike said earlier, it's brave. What would you I was in the military, spent 20 years in the military. But and either one of you, it doesn't matter who answers first or second. I want to hear about what you think about involvement. Do you feel that as a father, that involvement is important? What type of involvement do you or what type of involvement do you think is important that a Black father should provide for their children via the sons, as we're talking to you tonight?
I guess I'll go first. Um, in involvement with given the African American situation, involvement for us is everything. As you said, you were in the military, and that took a hit on everybody. Our two youngest brothers, even mom, because when the father is away, it's like, well, what's happening? Why isn't he here? You understand that, oh, it's a business trip. Oh, it's this. But you also know that no one's doing that work 24/7 because that's not impossible. That's impossible. So it's like, what are they doing? Well, they're resting. They worked 12 hours, they come back, they go and rest. So when when you're not involved, if you're not there, just because you're not there does not mean you're not involved. But kids tend to not see it that way. And sometimes it's evident, and it really leans on who is your partner. Because if the mother is despises the father, then the children by proxy may be resentful of the father because he's not there and doesn't have say in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but thankfully for us, we had both our parents and they trusted each other enough that, okay, we can I may not be involved, but I know that you got the kids, you secured them.
So
And we
it's a partnership, is what you're saying.
yes,
Involvement should.
it's a give and it's a take. You have to be it's all about trusting your partner when it comes to uh, involvement because somebody has to be there to raise that child. They don't know everything just off the top of their head, and if they find out from other means, it may not always be good.
Okay,
But
Sean Anthony, let's hear Sean Anthony's thought on that too. Sean Anthony, what's your thought on that? What do you consider to be involvement?
I consider it to be explanation because involvement can mean two things to me. It could mean that, oh, I'm here to demonstrate a choice that you could make, or I'm here to tell you where to go. Now, sure, you have choice and you have example, but I believe that it's more it's more of an example because you're supposed to live the proof. You're supposed to live what they want. In other words, you're supposed to be there for them. If you show them exactly what you're supposed to be, or at least give them the tools necessary for it, that's more involvement because then, as our mom always talks about, the hierarchy of needs. If your involvement is providing them the needs they need to survive and thrive, then you're not only involved, but you're also the key reason why they're able to move on to where they're supposed to be. So, in other words, involvement for me is more example. So, as you say, if I, as a man who has to work, you have to have a schedule. You have to get up. You have to be able to do what you need to do, regardless of the situation, regardless of the circumstance. You need to be able to, and that is a hard thing for many black individuals. You need to learn that you're not always at the top in the world. You just need to know that no matter what, you can still climb at least a bit higher depending on how hard you work. Because if you become a very valuable piece in a puzzle, then they can't get rid of you. That makes you get higher than all these other people. That makes you an important factor, making you so important that no matter what they say, they can't do anything to you. If they try to dock your pay, if they try to tell you, well, you can't do this, you already have the knowledge. If they try to do anything to you, though, you're able to go ahead and be like, well, I already have the knowledge. I can do whatever I want. So I'm gonna
Because
go do this.
you've had a great example. I
Exactly.
I think that you both make
Agreed.
really good points here. And I saw that Mike said, going to being at every game is overrated. Being at games is great, but that's not the he's absolutely right. Conclusion of fatherhood. Fathers are very important, and mothers are too. I'm not degrading mothers, but Teddy
Mhm.
makes a great point. It's a partnership. John Anthony, I like what you said, right? It's an example too. Because here's the thing: when you're sitting there, you're eating a meal. If your father is sitting there just eating with you, right? That time is spent, or that mother, your parents are just with you. That's involvement, right? That's a familial feeling. Um, Fathers who say they're not going to pamper, bathe, diaper their children, and I'm just telling you things that I've heard fathers, not just black fathers, say. But that moment together, that moment of taking care of my child, those simple things where a child learns to trust you, playing checkers with your child. I sat down the other day with your younger brother and I taught him checkers and Chinese checkers, right? To teach him, and we played chess together to teach him strategy, right? To also know that you can't win everything. Talking with your children about what's happening in the world, what happened while you were at work. I love what you said, Sean Anthony, because the idea is if the father, I watched my grandfather as a young man. He had a work ethic. I watched him work. And it taught me what it meant to work. I watched my stepfather, watch these men work. So I understood that a man had to work by the sweat of his brow. I understood that sometimes you don't want to get up, but you get up. Playing games with you is important, but the example sets are so important. Yeah, exactly. Me too, Mike. I think taking care of your son. There's a great part in the movie Roots where Kunta Kinte, he takes his child and he holds it up. It's an African thing of holding your child up. We look at it in the Lion King and we laugh. But there's a connection that fathers have just as much as mothers have with their children. And those two things that you both said right there are so important. And it's a fear of a father that you're doing those things. that you're providing those things. And sometimes you feel like, man, boys buck. You buck because that's a man. Sometimes I think that females do not understand that men are going to buck. That's a rebellion in a man. It's just in you. It's naturally there. But a man can tell another man, you need to calm down. Now, I understand, but you need to calm down. Does it sound familiar to you, to both of you all?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You need to calm down. If a father can't have that kind of interaction with their son, then there's really no relationship there. Who can be able to help that child when they get out of control?
They always need something to fall back
on. One of the greatest
on.
things in the world is raising a son to be a great man. Yes, there's a pride in that. There's a pride in that. The other question I have for you boys, I want you to think about something here, because I heard one of you say it. I think it was Teddy. If you have a child at the age of 14 and 15 years old, as opposed to 25, let's say 30 or 40, and you have a son, how much time do you think you can spend with that child?
I think I'll go this time since Tay went last time. Well, since you're 14, you wouldn't be able to spend that much time because you have you have nothing. In other words, you're still a teenager. It really comes down to, some people say that it comes down to your mental age and mental maturity. Sorry. That's And that's somewhat true, but it's not always true. Because if you're 14, there's only so much you can do at that point. You still have to go to school. You're most likely going to be living in your mom and dad's house because you can't really live on your own yet. There's a lot of stuff you can't do at that age. And as a result, you're stuck at that age trying to fight to do whatever you can for this baby, especially if the mom is as young as you, and even if she's older, she probably has a job too, and not only that, but she has to raise the baby. She has to provide milk. She has to provide protection. She has to provide things for the baby in order to keep in order to keep it from freaking out and panicking. She has to do a lot of things. As a result, having a baby at 14, you wouldn't be able to spend much time with a baby. You would have to go work several jobs just to make sure that you're able to provide at the very least. As for if you were 20 or 30, yeah, you would be able to spend a bit of time because you're already out. You already had enough time to get a degree. If you already got one, you had time to find a job and find at least some sort of place that would be hireable. You had some sort of way in your mind that said, I have enough time, I'm going to go do this. Even if you don't, you still have you have far more ability than a 14-year-old. You can buy a house. You you can provide protection. You can own a lot of things. And not only that, but your mental maturity is a bit higher. You know how the world works better than a 14-year-old, because in
Fair
school
point.
they're not going to teach you that. They're not going to teach you about many things, such as they're not going to teach you about the rate of buying a home, the rate of graduation. They're not going to be teaching you that just yet. They're going to be thinking, okay, we'll teach you that come 17, 18, if you make it all the way to ninth grade and stuff. However, if you don't, then they're not if you don't make it to high school and you're 14, if you're 14 and you're just getting into it, you're not going to realize this. You're not going to be able
You're
to
not
really
mature
figure
enough.
out how the world works. So
Okay.
as I just said, you wouldn't be able to spend much time.
Teddy, what's your take on it? You're 14, 15, or very young, and you have a child. Same thing. What's your thoughts on that question?
You won't have as much time with your child for that reason. You don't know how the world operates, or how to take care of your child just yet. So you entrust your child to the means of other people. If you don't have your parents, because sometimes that, be it as it may, some people don't have their parents where they will take care of the child while you're in school. And some of them are untrustworthy. It's not everybody's situation where they will go and do something because, oh, she had the child out of wedlock. She did this, and now it's vindictive, and they do things to kids, especially in the Black community, because they suffer from so much hurt and disassociation.
Mhm.
So when you entrust the life of your child to another person because you are in school or
You
you
have to be
have
in
to work
school.
a job, yeah, that at that age, you have to be in school. Now you got to work because now you got to provide for the baby, and hopefully the father is there. You may not know what the father. It's too much risk
It's a
in
lot. So
doing that.
what I hear from y'all is that there's a lot of risk, trust issues with that, things you may not know because you're still a child yourself. So I asked that question because in these last two generations, we've had more and more increasingly younger people having children. It's not saying that it's not possible to raise a child when you have them at a young age, but there's a lot of factors that go into and variables that go into the possibility of putting that child on the wrong path because of the things that just natural things that you have to do, right? Um, responsibilities. And when we look at the fact that the infant mortality rate in the Black community is always worse than any other culture in this country. It comes down to also the idea of, like one of you said, trusting others because you don't know. You're
And
too young to have been taught.
I have had friends that are like that. What they were doing was they were trying to bury their feelings with sex. That's just what it is. They wanted pleasure. They sought it elsewhere because they didn't
Okay.
like their home situation. They didn't
Okay.
know
So
what was going on.
if we go there with it, and I'll go there with you, right? If we go there with it, they're escaping into sex.
That's exactly what it
How
is.
how
Escapism.
how old do you think, from your perception? I want two individuals to say answers from both of you. How old do you think that you should be as a young male, uh, and engaging in sexual activity that could produce? Because any sexual activity where you lay down with somebody and fluids go into that female, I'm trying to keep that PC, could cause pregnancy. So tell what age do you, if you consider that, what age do you think you should be as a male engaging in sex with a woman? I know
I'll go
that's a
ahead
question.
before Teddy because I already know. I already have my answer. To be
Yeah,
quite
so
honest, I've said this before to Teddy and to all of our brothers. I personally, I believe that there is really no age that you should be really having a child, in my opinion, because it really comes down to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have children. I'm just saying you
Yeah,
have to be
okay.
prepared to have children. You have to, in my, for instance, for me, if whenever I finally do want to settle down and finally go ahead and have a family of my own, I have a list of objectives that I already have to have complete. I have to have a job, a stable income, probably a house that I can afford and almost pay off, a car
Okay,
as
you're talking
well.
about Shanak, you're talking about marriage and still settling
Yeah,
down.
I'm talking
I'm
about
saying,
marriage and stuff,
what
but
age are you going to be? Do you
yeah,
think
as I said,
for you
if
to
you're
get some nookie?
as I said, it really comes down to how prepared you are. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have children. I'm not saying that I don't believe that there is, and I'm not saying that there is no age where you're ready. I'm just saying in order for you to have, if you're even questioning having a child, you should already, if you're even questioning about laying down with a
Okay.
woman, you need to always remember that there is a possibility where you can still have a child even though you're wearing protection. You have There is always that possibility. So you should always be ready in case that happens. You should already have a plan. In other words, you should be at some age where you already know if it happens, whether it's accident or on purpose,
That they're
I
prepared.
am already prepared.
Okay. So you don't have a specific age. You just said that they should be prepared. Teddy, what's your answer?
Yeah.
Or it's about yeah, it's hard to say. Around you can be around a good 25 years old, but for me, it's not really it's not really about your physical age.
Okay.
It's more about your mental age. In psychology, we say that you are as old as your last trauma. So if you never grew up out of the 13-year-old mentality, because that's when you had a baby. That's when
Mm.
everything went wrong because uh my family wasn't involved. They shunned me because how dare I have a child out of wedlock. Now it's a whole trauma that I'm having and I can't get over. And I'm stuck and retarded in this si- part of my stage of my life. In psychology, we're also taught that life happens in stages. If that's going back to what we said previously, you won't have time for your kids because you have not completed the stages of your life of education, rendering, doing this
Your
to be
hierarchy of
stable in
needs.
your adult life. That's more
That's a
of
great point.
Eric's. That's more of not hierarchy of needs, but stages of life. Eric Erickson. If
That's Eric Erickson,
anybody
but
knows,
there's yeah.
it's a lot of stages that you have to complete in life, and if you do not complete that, you do you yourself and that child a disservice. So for me, you can as when you're 18 or if she's consenting, there's a lot of problems with that. If they're consenting, you're old enough, you know what's going on, by all means do what you're gonna do. Just
Okay. So you said
understand the
to the
consequences.
tango. Consequences and responsibilities and knowing what's going to happen. It's a good point. Yeah, y'all make good points. I didn't want to cut y'all off. I just wanted to make sure that you understood. I'm not saying be married because I'm not into the idea that people aren't going to necessarily engage in sexual activity just because because only because when they're
Yeah.
married.
Yeah,
So
but going to
so
what
he
Capo said, you do need to what he was generally saying and what I got from what he said is just have
be ready.
long-term goals. Understand,
That,
have a plan, have a goal. Because if you people are living for a moment and not living to get to a moment. Oh,
Okay,
In
I'm
other
keep that
living.
words,
thought. Keep that thought. I want both of y'all to keep that thought, and I want to talk about what Fahim wrote here. The impact of engagement is timeless. Father's impact through connections that allow for instruction, but also allows for independent development of persona. Consequently, I reveal to my son who his father is, and from my offering, he can determine his own pathway. Then, child can build from his father's plate and his own. He makes a very good point here. The engagement is timeless, right? The engagement is timeless, and it's something that needs to be done. And no matter how young or old that you are, you're not going to have much time at all, which is why you find those cases in grandparents raising, and that's true. Other people raising your children. But I want you to, I want you to think about this also. Okay, so we said responsibility, example, all of these things. And that's the high level thought that we go to try to explain it. But what happens when you do that? What happens with a black father? Because this is the issue with black fatherhood. Let's get really back to what our focus is today. If black fatherhood is challenged by the fact that people say that there is no co-residential, that's the scientific term they use, no co-residential involvement with the child. In other words, the mother and the father raise the child together. There is a high percentage of blacks who do not raise their child together. They don't live together. So you lay down at 14, 15 years old, you have a child. Say, one of you, or you find somebody, she fine, you fall in love with her, and y'all lay down, and now you have a child. You're not married, but that's still your child. What do you think is your responsibility as a father in raising that child? What do you think is one of the most important things that you can provide for that child in raising them as a young black father?
I'll go first since Papa went first last 2 times. For
Who cares?
the only thing that you can provide, but at that point and it's pivotal, is engagement. You need to engage with that child and let it feel loved, because that, if nothing else, if you can't provide clothes, if you can't provide money, it needs love. One of the main issues that I've been studying in psychology for the last 7 years is that children that do not have love do not form secure attachments, and you have problems. So if you can't provide anything else, they need to feel that it is love coming behind everything.
Okay.
The clothes that you get, the pampering. Show love to the mother if nothing else. Show love to the child. It needs to see an example of love and affection. People
Sean Anthony.
People don't
I'm
do that.
I'm cutting y'all because remember we only got an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep y'all answers succinct. But Sean Anthony.
Yeah, I'll get as quickly to the point as possible. What I really believe is it really comes down to, because I'm not going to say what Teddy said. Sometimes the mother and the father have disputes because, as you know, there's always going to be some person who's like, well, this isn't, especially if you're split up. Either you can't really, especially, it really comes down to, in other words, sometimes you can't really get along. So what I believe what it really comes down to is you need to really come in, and not only do you need to provide, but you also need to be able to be there and talk to them, because children need support. They need someone to talk to. And if they are living with their mother and you don't really agree with her, you don't really know, and oh, like, let's say that the reason y'all split was because one of y'all were manipulative. I'm not going to say which, I'm not going to say who. But reality, it really comes down to, I need to be there for you. You need to know that if the worst happens, if your mother leaves this world or is not here for a while, I'm always here and you can talk to me. They need that example.
Equal communication with both parents. So that's a great statement. Both of you all actually made very good points. But let me go further. You're 14, 15 years old. And I'm gonna tell you something. My parents were young when they had me. Both of them, very young. But here's the key point here. My father tells me that when I was a baby, and I tell you all this, that my mother would read to me. And she would read to me and try to encourage me to say the words with her very early. And I am a voracious reader. I read everything to this day. Even when you're young, because I don't want excuses here. I want us to understand that. Even when you're young or you have a limited amount of times. I was in the military. I was gone. But let me ask you a question. How many times, and it's yes or no, or very succinct, how many times have I ever sat down and read with you boys when you were little boys, even though I was in and out, going on ships and all over the place? Did I sit down and read with you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did
One
I
of
tell
my
you
favorite stories.
What you said? What are your favorite stories?
One of my favorite stories was Billy Goes Gruff. We would read that every night. Well, for the last couple of nights. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Did I go over your schoolwork with you?
Yeah, made sure that we were able to learn history. Even
Did
made
I did
even
I did I did even though I was gone? And I'm only speaking to parents who can't always be there. Did I ask you about your day? Did I talk to you about your situations that you went through?
yeah,
Yes.
Was I always able to be there
no,
physically? But did
no,
you
not really.
feel that there was a presence there that was always there with you?
Yeah,
Yes, you had to feel that love. I remember when you were on the ship. I didn't know what happened. I drew you a picture of when you had got on the ship because in my young mind, I saw a metal machine swallow my dad whole, and I was crying. I was upset. So I remember going away, and I went, okay, I'll draw a picture because I want him to know I miss him, I love him. Then dad moms will always say, hey, your dad is just sent an email. She would read it out loud to us. And we didn't know how to type. That's why we had a bunch of typing games so that we could try and type to you because that's what encouraged us to learn. And we want to learn to type so we can type it to dad and it makes sense. Because we were just running our fingers across the screen and it
Yes.
was like, there it is.
Whatever you was trying to say.
But we knew that it you're not going to always be there, but we want you to be there. We want you to understand that. And then you wrote back to us, which let us understand, yes, I'm here. I miss you. Even when and that was especially important as we got older because the military is a long haul job for some, but it's not forever. So you need to understand the difference between building that engagement because when the ride is over, it's over. And if you come back to dust, in the words of Johnny Cash, you will hurt.
It's important to me that you all understand that as you get older and you have your own kids. You both said it. It's the engagement, it's the example, it's the things that you do to establish with your son. It doesn't matter, or your daughter. As a father, and I think that two generations of African Americans, we have failed to really get that understanding. It's not the time, it's the quality of that time. It's the fact of understanding that it's important. You both said it. It's important for your mother to to cohabitate. Not necessarily that we got to be physically together, but the cohabitation technical term that they use that you're in the same house. That's not the point. The point is, are you engaging with your child? If you're a 15, 14-year-old child or a young person that has a baby, right? When my mother had me, she was young, but she made sure that I understood how to read early. She set a guidance for me. It's so important that as a parent, as a father, as a mother, that you understand that. Doesn't mean you're going to always get along with the person that you made the baby with, but there should always be positivity, always guidance, always engagement, so that the child learns. And you can learn along with the child. Just
And
because
if
you're
you're a
young,
young
you going
parent,
to school,
you're going to be.
yeah. Learn with the child, read with the child, make both of you smarter, learn together.
there's always some math that parents can learn because when you
There's
look at it
always
and be
new
like,
math.
I don't know what this is, you need to learn.
I remember coming home. Uh, I think I was in Bahrain at the time, and I came home and your mother was cutting everybody's hair, and she sat down to cut my hair, and we had a discussion. It was me and Teddy. We had a discussion about Newtonian principles, right? and we talked about the universe, and we talked about the moon and the stars and probations and how everything worked together and angles and all of this and solstices and all of these things that create these universal thoughts on how the world works. And I was so highly impressed that my son knew this and we could have this discussion. That what did I go do, Teddy?
I went and got a telescope so that we could go and see the solstice. We could see the
Yes.
satellite that blinks around the globe. Because I was heavily into astronomy. It doesn't mean that I want to be an astronaut or anything, but the fact of how everything worked in the world was fascinating to me
It's
and
engagement.
made
It's
time
engagement.
for that.
Sean Anthony, I remember that we were talking, you're a little boy, and we're talking about cooking. And I had said, hey, I don't want y'all eating ramen noodles out of the packages because they're too salty. It's too much sodium. You'll get sick. And then you said, well, Dad, can I make noodles and things without that? Can I just make my own? I said, well, you can make your own. And then you would contact me and talk, well, that's what I'm adding to it. I'm going to add this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I was in Bahrain. And if people don't out here, you understand, I was gone for 3 years. I got maybe a month home to see my sons. That's like, remember when the uncle said, that's like a lookup. And me and my wife, it was hard. But you Skyped me, you talked to me, she encouraged to make sure that you guys did it. And then, like with the noodles, when that happened, what did I do, Sean Anthony? What did I go buy? Do you remember?
My first cookbook.
Bought your cookbook.
Yeah, a cookbook
bought
and
you
an
a
apron.
chef's hat, an apron, some utensils. It's the engagement. It's not braggadocious. I'm trying to make a point that even the little things that you do, you're engaging with what you're trying to grow in young men, young women, as a Black father. Because, see, the statisticians, the Walter F. Wilcox, let's get into the history, who I told you all yesterday, we were driving, was a census taker and one of the major proprietors of the idea, right, that we're out here, Black fathers are no good. That the Negro, hey, thank you, Auntie. I pray to. and I think that is something that we need to understand. For the better part of 150 years, right, we've had it in national discussion that Black men are bad fathers. Black men do not take care of their kids. Black men just make babies. They don't raise babies. And we have lied to people. The Moynihan report that Nixon pushed out that wanted to get done, that said that Black fathers are not in the homes. Black fathers don't read to their kids. They don't eat with their kids. Black fathers have multiple homes. So it's like, Papa was a Rolling Stone, right? The pimp mentality, the thug mentality. All of these things have perpetuated this idea of Black fatherhood being warped. And you all just told me you have an understanding of what the definition of Black fatherhood is. So what is your responsibility? Because you were raised with a mother and a father. What is your responsibility for your children and for those, not just your children that you may have, for those around you? What is your responsibility to counter that narrative? How do you do that?
To give that child love in everything that you do. If you're not there physically, write them a letter. Send them a mixtape of favorite songs so that they feel connected to you. Send them a picture of you with a note. Send them clothes with a note or just clothes. Do something that makes that they can feel love and everything. Give them your favorite hat. Give them something that they can feel connected because you need engagement. That's not even outside of fatherhood. If you have an extended family, our extended family is all the way in Chicago, but we stay connected to them because they send us things. They say, even with pastor, send me something so that I can keep you on my mind constantly.
That you're
And
there. Like there's a
that's
reminder.
what it is. That as
Okay.
a father, you want to be relevant in a child's life. That that's your bottom line. That's how you do it. Show
Okay.
love in everything that you do.
I completely agree. Sean Anthony.
I completely agree with Teddy. And as a result, yeah, I say that you need to show interest. Just as Dad said. When I said that I like cooking and I wanted to do something in order to make noodles healthy so I could go ahead and have them every day because I love freaking ramen noodles. And I'm mad
Okay.
that I still can't eat them as much as I want to. But I'm able to make them from scratch because of the fact that mom and dad show interest and they were like, okay, in that case, how about we get you this? How about we get you this? It not only did it tell me, oh, I could go ahead and attempt this. It also taught me a very valuable skill, like, oh, I can cook now because I'm able to do this because they were able to show interest. You have to show interest. And that shows a child that you care because you can say you care as many times as you want. You can say it till you're blue in the face, but
Actions.
if you show interest and you go here, let me interact with you, let me go ahead and do let me help you get to this goal that you want to reach because you said that you wanted to do this, you appear that you want to do this, and if they say no, I don't want to do this, you go ahead and say okay, then in that case, tell me what you really want to do so that we can do that. It's all about interest.
It's a great point, and a very astute point. Um, I I am so proud of my children, and I don't mean that in a negative part. People say you shouldn't be. I'm very proud of my children. I hold you to a standard with me. I don't it's not that I expect you to not fail. I tell you what with failure. What do I
Don't
tell you?
lie in it.
Fail
Don't
what?
lie in it. Fail
Fail forward.
forward, don't lie in it. Right? We all fail. We don't lie in it. We don't just lay there and accept. And we keep moving, we keep going, we grow. And I think that the greatest like I'm so proud of the fact that both my sons are now high school graduates. I'm proud that you're both going to college. I'm proud. But even if you wanted to go do trade school, even no matter the fact that you have a good head on your shoulders, that I heard you tell me today, right? Have a plan. Have a plan, right? Because to me, that is so important and often something that is very, very, very it's just glossed over. People don't really pay attention to it. And I tell you, I was telling somebody recently that I tell my children to have a plan. Mastery is the biggest thing for me. Master what it is that you're doing. Get out of high school, take those 10 years and master. It doesn't mean you're going to get paid a lot of money, but you master, right, what you're doing so that when you get to to a level, to a point, you've mastered several skill sets. I'm going to say one, I'm going to read something to you all before we get ready to get off of here. And I wrote this. I was in Bahrain, and I had a picture of all of my sons, and I wrote this, and it was from my heart. And but God gave me this. I got up one morning. I was missing you all, which I do every day. I did every day, and I wrote this thing. God gave me this thing on me. It was called a Father's Prayer. And I said, for my sons, I have very simple prayers. First, that God protects and holds them in his loving care. I pray that he gives them laughter and wipes every tear. I pray he soothes their minds from all unjust fears. I pray that he guides them with his love every day, while opening, closing doors, and then also showing them a better and just way. I pray as they grow that they grow stronger in him, strong in their faith to become honorable, decent men. I pray as they flourish under his watchful eye that they find true love and very few weeping eyes. But ultimately, I pray that for all the years that they may see, that God grants them wisdom to be all that they can be. I pray that he grants this father's sincere prayer, allowing me the joy of knowing that God cares. Through all the many years that I plan and hope to see, I simply pray, Lord, that you make these boys to be a better man than me. Now, that's not saying that I was a bad man, but I believe that that should be every father's prayer. And I held that within my mind, and everything, every decision, every place I had to go, watching Teddy cry as I had to ride out on those ships, and having a wife, because that's an important part. You all having a mother that understands the importance of you having that father in your life. As we go into this Father's Day, that co-representation is so important. You all are great examples of that. Because even though you had parents who are married and we lived, I wasn't always here. And I couldn't be. And so it was important for me to do the things that I could do to give you those examples, those positive examples, that guidance, that interaction, all of those words that we use tonight. And I wanted you on here before this Father's Day so that people could understand, no matter what age you are, 14, 15, no matter what the statistics tell you, the percentages tell you, you can still be a good Black father. You can still go out there and be an example for your child. Raise good children. Raise good young Black men. Mentor good Black men. Because that's a huge part of it too. If you learn those things, it doesn't mean you got to be a person with multiple degrees, a PhD. It simply means that you do everything that what the boys said on here tonight. You're engaged. Teddy stressed it 3 times, that you show love. The idea of a Black father not wanting to kiss his son on the head, or not being able to hug and tell them that it's going to be okay. There's strength in that. There is strength in that. Because as long as you know that no matter what is going on, my father and my mother, they got my back. Regardless of Father's or Mother's Day or whatever, we can raise better children. We could be better fathers. We could be better mothers. We could be a better society. We won't be worrying about 13-year-olds going out there to go carjack somebody. We worry about 10-year-olds shooting somebody to death. We won't worry about the fact of our young children making babies, not baby.
Just making bad decisions in general.
Because they don't feel that love. That love starts with the people who created that life. And as I said at the beginning of this hour, it starts with that father. Because life comes out of you and it nestles and grows in that woman. But it starts with you. No matter what age. And I'm going to close this by saying I was able to reconnect with my father, my biological, my father, after many, many years. And the most important thing that I will tell you that I got from reconnecting with my father, and I have stepfather, I have many men who have mentored me, but this is the thing about biological connection. When I sat there and I talked to him and I realized the things, my attitudes, the way I carry myself, the way my sons do certain things biologically that they inherited from him and by proxy from me, I learned to not be ashamed of certain things. Certain things I was like, I don't know why I think this way, why I feel this way. I sleep a certain way. I'm gonna say it to the world. I sleep in a very I sleep in a baby-like position, right? I've always slept like that. And I remember when Teddy was born, and then Sean Anthony, and then Elliot, and then Matthew, and it was so funny to me to watch them sleep. And I was like, these boys are sleeping just like their dad. I didn't teach them that. That's biological. We touch our children's lives on a spiritual, physical, mental level. And when I reconnected with my dad, that's the thing that I realized. Those biological receipts, those things that I got from him, that when I talk to him, only me and him understand. Because I know I got it from him. A simple connection. Connect with your children. Love your sons and your daughters. Be good Black fathers. Be responsible men. I didn't want to get on a soapbox, but my sons are important to me. And I can never understand a man who does not cherish the blessing and the grace and the mercy that God gave you to have a child. That's a blessing. No matter who you had them with, treat them as a blessing. Let them know they're a blessing. And they will in turn bless others. All right, boys. We went a little bit over tonight, but I want that to be the point. You all, as always, you make your daddy proud. You make me smile because I listen to you. You are very intelligent young Black men, and I assume that my grandchildren will one day be very intelligent Black children because of what was been invested and given to you, and I see that you are growing inside of yourself. But I'm gonna leave the last couple of moments to you all. Ted, you go first. Any last words?
My last words would be July 24th is Parents' Day. As we discussed here today, it is important for both the mother and the father to be involved. A month in May for mothers, a month in June for father. That's nice. July 24th is Parents' Day. Give reverence to your parents. Call them. Say, hey, thanks for giving me life. You take advantage. We take for granted that our parents are going to be there, and then one day they're not, and this is scary for us. I remember, I don't listen to a lot of rap, but I do remember DMX, where he said about his mother and his father, wished I didn't have them, but I'm glad that he made them. You may be having a dispute with your family, with your mother, your father, or people who raised you. If that's their grandparent, and that's your great grandfather who raised you, or whoever raised you, give reverence to them and let them understand they were loved. They're not going to be here all the time, and I think that's an underlying fear that I had especially with me, because my dad was in the military, and we know what the military does. It goes out to fight for the country. Sometimes I was worried that he wasn't coming back.
Low battery.
It is like that. So it's an underlying fear that your parent is not going to be there. But we take it for granted I got time. The young always think that there's time. It's not. You don't have even regardless of whatever age you have, a child, you don't have time, either just by mortality or the fact that you're in school, and
Hmm.
life is always going to continue. We've all seen It's a Wonderful Life. It goes on. It's just where are you going to be in it? And I think that's for religious people or people of faith. I think that's what ultimately God is going to hold you to. The impact that you made here, how you touched others, even just by giving life. In the Christian faith, they had Jesus. God touched the world by giving us Jesus. We also see what happens when a father does not do what it's supposed to do with David and his lineage tried to kill him, hurt a bunch of other people, and ultimately died. What you
Talking about
don't want?
Absalom.
Yes, Absalom. I couldn't remember his name. If you if you're not careful, fearfully and wonderfully made is what the word says. You make a life when you lay down with that woman. If you don't have any fear, if you didn't have weren't careful with what you were doing and you just wanted pleasure, you need to do everything you can for that child to make up for that, because what you have ultimately done was sin because you did not have a plan.
Okay. Those are good points. Those are really astute points. Sean Anthony.
To end this, I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't expect people, parents and children, should not expect to be perfect. They should not expect to be giving praise all the time, nor should they expect that they are always going to be as as loving as caring as they are, because that may not be the way they were raised. So what I'm going to say is just be the best parent you can be. Be the best parent or child you can be. Because this Father's Day, this Parents' Day, I want people to go ahead and say that even regardless of their living is they could have lived a childhood that they rather not be able to that they rather not remember. They could have lived a perfect childhood. But either way, you need to always remember that you were put on this earth, and depending on what you did, if you made a difference in this world, if you did anything, and I'm sure that there are people, and everybody can at least say it, that there is something that they've done that they're proud of, that they believe that they could have done better at, that they've got very interested in. I believe everybody has something that they're like, man, I'm so happy that I'm able to try again, that I'm able to live here and still have a chance.
Hmm.
And to that, you have to thank your parents, because at some point they had you. Rather they thought that it wouldn't work out. You're still here, and you were able to live through any and all problems. You need to always respect your elders. Sure, and for some people that may be a bit harder, because depending on your living circumstances, you may not think that respect is needed. But you always have to remember there is someone out there. There's someone who had it harder, that had it at just like you, that there was someone out there who was always next to you, someone who was always there, and regardless of what happened, they were able to be there. Whether it be your parents, your uncles, your grandparents, you have to always remember your parents made it so that you were able to be on this earth, so you were able to even have the ability to do whatever you wanted to do with the rest of your life once you were
Hmm.
done. You
Good
lived
point.
as long as you lived so you lived solely because your parents gave you this life. And though you may think that it's not worth it or that it is worth it, in the end, it's a life that you have to live. You you're the next generation, and there's nothing else that can really be said. If you want if you're if you're a child and you believe that you weren't raised as well as you could have, remember, thanks to your parents, you were able to learn either a good example or a bad example. You know what you want. And
Mm.
because of your parents, they taught you the example that you need to have. If they were never around, but they always taught you, you know, I want to be around, but I want to also be so that when I'm not around, they know that I'm still here. If your parents weren't really around and they didn't really interact with you, and you feel like, man, I could have, they could have tried a bit better, then you know I want to be a parent
That tries better.
that I'm around, I'm always here, and it really comes down to, and if you're a parent and you feel like I want to be around but I can't, this world is not as just, it's not the way I want it to be. If you feel like that, you need to make it so that you can still be around regardless of what happens. You need to be able to be like, I was here. You want your child to have the best. And as they always say in movies, what would your parent think? Because you raised them to a certain expectancy. You raised them to be as good or as bad as they were, and they want and so when you think that, when the child thinks, what will my father say about this, you want them to be able to say, I shouldn't do this. I want to be, and that's why it's so important for people to say, I'm proud, I'm happy, i'm I'm so happy, I'm so lucky to have you. A child needs to hear that. Rather
Mm.
you say it just out of the blue, or barely even, or even barely, you should always be able to look back at life and be able to say, my parents said that they were happy. And that put something into my head that made me think, what would they think if I did this? What would they do if they knew where I was? You need to
Mm.
say this before it's too late, because as Teddy just said, you never know. You don't have, because people think that everybody has time. I'm young, I'm old, I can do this. But in reality, life is unexpected. Look at the world we're in. You could be gone in a second, and the last words or the last thing you could have done is make somebody angry at you, make somebody sad, happy. You want to be able to be like, at least I left a good memory. If not at that very second that I was taken away, at least it was there for half or even a second in their life. So they
That's
know
important. That's
exactly.
important. That's important. That
So
example. Those are great points, boys. I appreciate you all coming on. I had a different plan for today, but I thank God that I followed the idea of I told you about the last minute, so I appreciate you making the time for your dad to come on and have this discussion. For all of you all out there that stayed with us, thank you. Please like, share, subscribe. We are growing as a channel. I'm very happy with that. But please like, share, subscribe, and encourage your friends to watch this episode. Encourage young black men to watch this episode. Fathers, sit down, watch it together. Hopefully, our conversation will spur questions that maybe you which may want to ask your sons or those who you mentor, you take care of. Until then, until next week, I want to tell you, as we get ready to approach Juneteenth, it's coming up too. Um, Stick with us as we move further with this network. Boys, I'm happy that you are on here, and we will be seeing you all probably next week as we do figure out what we're going to do for Juneteenth. But until then, until we come back to you next week, you all have a blessed and great rest of your weekend and a great blessed Father's Day for you fathers out there with your children. All right, boys. Thank you for coming on.
Peace, people.
Problems.